computer.
Excellent.
Hi everybody, so my name is Sandra Kelly and I am here today with Hannah Ní Mhaonaigh and Al Mazer. So Hannah has a solo show here in Garter Lane Arts Centre and Hannah is in conversation with Mazer today. So Hannah, I'm just wondering, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your practice?
Yeah, so I'm a Dublin-based artist, and I suppose I'm comfortable in like describing what I do rather than defining it. And I'd say the last few years I've been really interested in the medium of paint, and so like color, texture, shape, and there's a huge element of chance in my work. So that's something that like I enjoy, and I suppose the A Stab in the Dark is the show that I'm doing in Garter Lane, and I suppose that kind of feeds into like the way that I work. So yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you, Hannah. And Al, I'm just wondering a little bit about your practice and if you could tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, I what would I be? I would be a contemporary artist, maybe, multidisciplinary, and multidisciplinary because I would have concepts and I would sort of try and find out what's the best way to execute them. So some primarily paint on walls, and it's led me into a studio and gallery spaces more now, but I'd be still interested in using different mediums. So I've done video, a lot of print work I've actually done, and that's just from working with a print gallery, discovering that medium and loving it and progressing more with that. Yeah, I come from a graffiti street art background. That's primarily where I was, but I've always had a love for art and studied art and visual communications. And my practice, like what do I be doing? I just had a show there, and I have a show in London next week, and it's right now a lot of it is inspired from the outdoors. I've always used this terminology, integrated lifestyle, like everything works in harmony. And I noticed from doing loads of hikes and loving the outdoors and that exploration, that has come into my practice now, like the forms and the illustrative aspect of botanics. So that's it.
That's brilliant. So I'd say anybody watching this YouTube clip is probably going to wonder how you guys came in contact or how your paths crossed.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering how you would have met or how Hannah's residency would have came up.
Yeah, it all just sort of unfolded organically. I was going down to another artist had messaged me about doing a studio visit. Sean is his name. What's Sean's second name, Hannah?
Sean O'Rourke.
Sean O'Rourke, yeah. It's such a sound guy. I was actually out with him there 2 weeks ago. He came to the show here in Atelier. And he was talking through his practice and all his work is amazing. And Hannah was one of the artists in the studio. And the way Hannah described the work, with color, form, exploration, those are sort of similar and familiar narratives for me too. And so I was just sort of drawn to it and just asked. And I must have just reached out to you or got Sean to message you or something like that. And we just started chatting. As I do with loads of other artists, I'd see someone and curious mind is always good. And it led us on to conversate more. Yeah, well, I think that's how it rolled.
Yeah, no, it was. It was like Sean gave me your details to get in touch. And it was kind of like just before you were doing the visit with Sean, like just before COVID kind of happened. So it was kind of like, it was, totally by chance, but like really lovely that it was like we were able to get in touch, and then we kind of just communicated over Zoom and chat for a while, and then
we did it Zoom. And lockdown had started, that was it, because I was trying to get some shit. I was like, what do you do now? Are you working from home? So I looked at it like as I'd always, before lockdown, right, I'm always like moaning how I don't have enough time for this and that, gentle moans, like just like, well, wish I had more time. And then I was given all this space to create work, so I sort of looked at it as like a great opportunity. So I was wondering, were other artists in that same mindset, or was it harder to create? And sort of those are the initial conversations Hannah and I were having. It's like, where are we now with our practice? Are we going to use this time, or is this time for reflection, or do we need to just down tools? And we just sort of kept in contact with that, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was kind of like a perfect time because I suppose like when you came, I was still in the Clonskey residency. But by the time everything happened and COVID came, like the residency had come to an end kind of abruptly at Christmas time in the November. And then there was like months where it was like there was no certainty of having like a space to work in and stuff.
Yeah.
And in that space, it was like I was working from home, and I remember I I'd been working in oil paint in Clancy Quay, and then now because I was kind of working from home, like in my mum's box bedroom, I was like starting to use acrylic paint and then thinking of how to mimic acrylic paint and stuff like that. So it was so nice then being in touch with Al and knowing that like that residency came up at like such a lovely time that it was kind of, it bookended like that time when I didn't have a studio, but knowing that that was coming was really great. And I kind of did feel like I was preparing for it and thinking and kind of looking at like mediums that were interesting me and shapes and stuff, like in my preparation, even, you know, kind of like for that. So it was so nice having that to look forward to.
I think that's what sort of, I was like, probably looking for that a little bit, you know, when we were conversating. That was probably in the back of my mind going, there's an opportunity here for a residency, because I knew you finished up with the other one. And so those are the sort of things I was looking for, I guess, in artists at certain times. Like, is that drive there, that ambition, that curiosity, that even though you don't have a space, but is that still tipping away? Because those are sort of the drivers, like to, and so when, again, everything sort of aligned nicely. When I offered you the space, you just hit the ground running, you know. Same with another artist, Sean, incredible guy. And you're both just like, I remember doing a studio visit with you and the whole space is full. I was like, oh, Molly, it was like a coiled string, like, you know, a cord, like, you know, they're just released in the studio. And that was like such a lovely thing to see. And it sort of reaffirmed my belief in you and your abilities and stuff like that, you know.
And I'm just wondering, because you've obviously touched off the importance of a studio space. And Hannah, you're saying that your residency in Mazer space came up at a time when you really needed it, because obviously your practice had changed because you were in a box room. How influential do you think a studio space is to your practice? Like, do you find that if you don't have a studio space, to both of you, are you limited in what you can do, even when it comes to studio visits and engaging with other people?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's kind of, do you want to go ahead, Al?
No. A lot of things popped up on my screen. Anyway, you go first, Hannah.
No, I feel for me like there's like an interesting dynamic with the studio, and like you said, it's really important. Like, and it's so nice to have a studio, like you said, to create that like network of like inviting people to come and check it out when you have got work, or just being like, when I'm in the studio, like I'm very prolific. Like I'm in there and I make and I fit it into my schedule. Like, it's just like a natural thing that I would be going to the studio. And I suppose even the conversations you have inside the studio are, I don't know, there's like trickery that you're doing on yourself when you're telling you're finished with paintings when you're not finished with paintings. So it's like, I think like some people's notebook work, like I wouldn't use preliminary drawings or notebook work. Like, so when I'm in there, I'm making. I think a funny thing a while ago was when somebody was walking by the studio. It was like somebody in the Marsh, Harold's Cross, and when they were walking by, they just popped their head and say hello, and they were like, "Geez, Hannah, like, do you have a chair to sit on?" And I realized that like I actually hadn't sat down in the studio in like 3 months. Like, I just literally had been using like, you know, the stools that I did have, like to like varnish or to let things dry or whatever. But like, I didn't even realize that while I was in there, I don't need to like ease myself in. When I go in there, I just kind of do. But I also know it's very hard to have a studio, and there's like sometimes like it can be like if there's not enough studios going or financially and stuff like that. So there has been windows where I haven't had a studio, and I suppose I just look at it as a time to be thinking and researching and not let it get down on you, because you can link up with people in different ways. And like, that's the thing, like if you have your work documented in a certain way, you can reach out to people in that kind of sense, and kind of almost like you're telling yourself, like, you know, you'd love to have a studio like continuously, but you're telling yourself like, right now I'm going to reserve and think of things in a different way. And then when you have your studio, you go hell for leather kind of thing. But
that's a good way to do it.
Yeah,
it's your practice as well allows you to do that, do bursts. You know, we're not let's say figurative oil painters where you have to go in and do your 7 hours every day in drawing time. It allows you to do this sort of high energy reaction painting. That's sort of what you're saying. Like, your preparation work, your notepads are already in your head, so you're sort of just laying it out. I'll be the same. So it's nothing wrong, even though you don't have a physical studio space for certain months. You're still, what we're talking about, building up, coiling back up again, ready to spring. You know?
Yeah.
Um, what was the actual question there again, Sandra? I forgot.
Sorry,
Not that you went off tangent. I got distracted with all the pop-ups.
Just about how beneficial you find having a studio space and if it changes your practice in any way.
Yeah, for me it does. Like I'm blessed now. I'm in Atelier Now. It's my studio / gallery for other artists, and it's just my hub. But so of course it's hugely beneficial. Headspace and physical space are things that we really need to create work. And if they're sort of jammed or we don't have them, it sort of breaks your flow of producing artwork. So for me, studios give a great sense of routine. Like it's something that I've never had in my life. It's something I didn't really want, but I sort of strive towards it now. Like Monday to Friday I work, and then I try not to work on weekends. And so that sort of place gives you a bit of a routine, because our lives are so sporadic if you don't have a 9 to 5. So it works for that. And then to sort of, just have a safe, clean space to work in is also helps develop. And I've noticed from different studios, I've lived in different countries, different studios, you produce different work. You'll scale down, the colors will change. That's with mood as well. I've noticed we're working out there in a grain store in Cabotili, and comparison to working here, the work is completely different. It's really weird, so it's vital. But what was the one thing that you were saying there, Hannah, that I want to reference? I can't think of it now. I'll come back to it. But it was about the studio space anyway.
Yeah. And I think as well, like it's making the what you have in those periods, but also the ideal thing is to have one, like what Al says. Like I'm looking forward. I'll be having a permanent one at the end of October, and I can't wait to just have that as there's an identity as well associated with your studio, I think, as well. It's like it kind of gives you a little bit of stability and kind of this is a solid thing because what you're making is so one-sided. You know what I mean? It's kind of so. But
the fun thing is that when you have a full-time studio and then you're not, we live lives. Our practice is one part. We've got other aspects of our life.
Yeah.
And you're like, come January, I have a little baby due in January. I'm presuming I'm not going to pay for January, February, or March. And so then there's the guilt of having a studio and not using it too. So you have to be really sympathetic. You
do 100%. Don't let it be a burden. If it turns into a burden,
the studio sometimes is actually grand. You can just flex, as you said, on your preparation. So I'm going to use January, February, March. I really want to learn more about sculpture and designing on computer. So we work from home and not feel so guilty then of not utilizing the space. So if you don't have a space at times, it doesn't mean you're going to stop working. We live in a world now where you can showcase your work and make it so accessible globally. And you've got different ways, mediums of even doodling on paper or whatever at home. My first solo shows were in my single bedroom apartment out in Dundrum and spraying out the balcony. Would like to let it dry, and you can still get it done if you just have that want to do it. That's me speaking from a space now. I'm sure there's other people's life and circumstances that don't facilitate that, but where there is a will, there's a way. I believe for sure.
And I think it's a really good way to lead into my final question for both of you is, what advice would you give to any other artists?
God, that's a loaded question. Eat well, don't smoke. I don't know, all the stuff that we don't do. So your inner voice is, when you step into studio, your practice is quite lonely to a degree, and so your inner voice is talking to you, and that voice, let's say for me, my inner Al, needs to be my ally, not my enemy. And so to practice a lot of be empathetic with yourself, we're our biggest critic. So just if you become aware of that voice and he or she or they isn't speaking to you the way they should be, to sort of work on that and sort of take stock of your abilities and your achievements. And the way I find to do that is by practicing a lot of gratitude. Like this morning, do my little journal and be grateful that it's Monday. I wrote down being Monday and not being hungover, and just being ready for the week. Grateful that I did a bit of practice yesterday. that I'm grateful for my laundry that I washed it and hung it out, so it's going to be dry later. This is just off the back of coming off holidays. But like those little, that conversation with myself will then, when I go to do my practice and I don't have a good day painting, it doesn't, as I used to be like, you're shy, you can't do it, you're rubbish. To now be like, okay, I had a bit of a dud day, but let's go again tomorrow. And then if I do a good action or let a painting sit for a while, I think you do this as well, Hannah, you paint a painting, let it sit for a while and come back, and all it needs is just that little flair and to recognize, wow, okay, nailed that. So just that sort of conversation with self, I think, is very important. And then also to discipline is something that's it's essential. You know, there's no cavalry coming over the hill to save you when you work for yourself and you're an artist. So accountability and discipline are essential. And ways of doing that is like by putting structures in place, you know, with like, okay, I'm going to do 2 hours a day in the studio, up to 3, up to 4. Practice that. And the more you do it, you never feel bad leaving the studio after doing a few hours, you know. So yeah, those sort of things I think are very essential for artists. And then like there's so many, I could go on for an hour here about this, you know, making your work accessible. We spoke about this, Hannah, as well. Like you put all this energy into this space, this canvas or a video piece, whatever it is, give itself its justice that it's needed. Don't let your ego go, oh no, that's not good enough, I'm not going to show that. If you pour 10 hours into that, give it its right and show it, put it up online, show it on your Instagram, send it to curators, do that marketing aspect of the work that it deserves, you know. And we all have self-doubt and fear of judgment and all those horrible things, but you know, with practice you overcome them a bit, and it'll just enable you to produce more work and showcase it what it deserves to be. Okay, you're up, Hannah.
Well, no, everything that Al said is so true. Like, and I suppose like if you're like just a recent graduate or emerging artist, it's kind of like, I think, yeah, discipline is really important, but also like looking around at your peers, like they're going to be the curators and your fellow kind of colleagues throughout the year. So it's like, look out for each other. Like if something comes up, like share it. Like I think like for applications and stuff like that, it's kind of like, even you can see now like established people who are like even represented by galleries and stuff, like are kind of doing DIY shows that are really exciting. So it's kind of like, you know, there's not an end point. And I think it's really important what Al said as well about like, you know, life is going to happen and there's going to be times when you can have a studio or you can't, or, you know, where you need to take breaks and stuff like that. And I suppose the fear of standing still sometimes, it's like, it's actually really important to take the times that you need, you know, if this is the long game. But like, yeah, just like the DIY shows I was about to talk about, like, you know, there's West Cork, there's like We Can Dance, and like a lineup of like insane, like really like strong artists, or even you know, they would be represented, but they're making their own opportunities and coming together and like doing interesting stuff. And yeah, like DIY artist-led spaces, but also like the networking and reaching out to people. Like you can see how approachable Al is, like, you know, very generous nature. It's like there's people that like, if you're interested in their stuff or what they do, like reach out like for a studio visit, for a coffee, you know, and without expectation that like, you know, they're going to give you a show or something like that, because it's not how it goes. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of curators, there's a lot of artists, you know, but it's just more just making that connection and network of like peers and like friends, you know, I think is really important. And I think sometimes like the applications for, you know, arts council stuff and stuff like that can seem like big deals, you know, and they are, and they support artists amazingly, but it's like maybe start off on things that are more accessible and gentle, like, you know, submit an image of your work. So if you got nice images of your work, and then your bio that you've kind of mastered, you know, and then it's like stepping stones, and one thing leads to the, you know, so that's kind of, and just don't be comparing yourself to other people.
That's brilliant advice. So what you said about stepping stones, like, you know, we don't, you know, academically it's hard for visual artists to sit down and like write your bio about yourself, but you do it, it's done. You're documenting your work, showcasing it, and you're building up and building up. So then when a gallery does reach out, or a curator, you have it there in the bank and just shoot it across. Building websites and stuff like that. And then when you're speaking about peers as well, that's something I did a good few years ago. I was living in Arkansas, and I was looking at what 2 artists do I love, and who do I like to be like, pretty much, you know. There's a French artist called J.R., another Irish artist called Conor Harrington. And it's like, what do they do for their success? What things do they have in their life? You know what I mean? And I looked at it. And then what you said, reach out. I literally just messaged Conor and it's like, hey man, do you mind if I fly over to London and pick your brain on how you did this? And he was like, yeah, no worries, but I'm not finished till 7. And already there, that's the first indicator. No matter, I'm flying all the way over. I was in Ireland at the time there. I'm not going to meet you until I'm finished painting at 7 o'clock. So he's practicing discipline there. I, on the other hand, would have been like, oh, yeah, you're in it too. Sure, I'll meet you at the airport. So that was a good learning there. And I met with him, and what I learned was there was no secret sauce. It was just the hours he put in, giving the work it deserved to go out there. And then with JR, I was looking at this guy global, like everywhere, going everywhere. And he was just, it was healthy habits, healthy relationship, didn't drink. Now, drinking, I'm not opposed to it, but if it disturbs you at certain times, like, so he just had this very, like a very clean life, and it just, you could see him just go across the world with it. So that's it, like reach out to your community, but also people, and sort of look at them as case studies and what are the habits that they have in their life for their success. Because as I say, it's not just going to the studio. We need structure and stability and comfort to be able, like these thoughts of like, we're not the Rolling Stones going around, like, you know what I mean? If you care in your life, it's pretty much, I feel it's going to impact on your practice. So if you've got things sort of a bit of a less drama, it gives you just more headspace to create more work, like, you know, that's what I think.
I think they are both really good answers, because you've really dove into so many different ways that you can help yourself as an artist. On behalf of Garter Lane, I just want to say thank you so much to Hannah and Al for being in conversation. For anybody who's interested and wants to join Hannah in a live Q&A on the 21st of October, there's links available on garterlane.ie, and that's at 3 o'clock on the 21st. Thank you, everybody.